Welcome to Foreseeable Future Foundation's Overcoming Obstacles in Sports conversation. Mark Farrell, really psyched to be with you guys and with some great athletes who are going to be joining us in a few minutes. Find out about what makes them tick, how their magic happens, and more. I first found out about the foundation about a year ago when I read about them. And being a visually impaired athlete, amateur athlete, let me underscore that, and more, I wanted to align myself with an organization that believes in giving possibilities to persons who are visually impaired so they can participate in sport and recreation. And voila, Griff Pinkow created this organization and they're doing just wonderful work. An event today is just one little episode of what they do in impacting people's lives. So we have three esteemed athletes today, three elite athletes. Our first guest is Adam Lynn. Adam, give a wave.
Hey.
Adam is a triathlete and author and wears a really colorful Achilles track shirt very well.
Always.
Jason Romero is probably on his way out of the airport because I think he's been delayed for 16 hours because he put me on hold 16 hours ago in the airport when we were supposed to talk. He's an endurance athlete, the first blind athlete to run across this great country of ours. Jason, give a wave.
Hello, guys.
And Ren is getting off her horse. It's hot where she is in Lexington, so she's probably trying to give her horse some water right now. But we want to thank our sponsor, Swerve Fitness. If you've never been to Swerve Fitness in New York City, it's a great place. They have spinning like you wouldn't believe. The group and team competition is kind of unparalleled. So I urge you to check out Swerve Fitness. Now, as somebody who's done triathlons and marathons, I have an appreciation for people who do this for a career or they're top amateurs. And it's just something that I can really, really respect, especially when you bring the word disability. We don't consider ourselves persons with disabilities, but yet we have to do things differently. So we got some questions, and we'd also like to hear from you guys, not the panelists, the viewers. So if you have some questions, we're going to get to those near the end of our conversation today. Feel free to send those via chat and keep them G-rated because otherwise Jason and Adam will just go off on tangents. Our first question is, what motivates you to train at a higher level than most? Adam, we'll start with you, my friend.
Oh, that's an excellent question, Mark. I think it's like an addiction, right? You start off slow, and I joined Achilles many years ago, back in 2003. And, you know, I was content with running for a while, and then it just started building itself. The better you felt running, then why not throw in some bike, and then why not throw in some swim?
What was your first sport of interest? Because obviously triathlete obviously is a competitive sport overall, but there's three disciplines. What's your first love?
First love, or I go back and forth. You get a running injury and swimming looks great, and then you get out in some open water and the bike looks pretty great. I'd say it's funny. Running was my least love, and I think it's become my most at this point.
Jason, how about you? What motivates you to become that elite athlete?
Yeah, I just do what I love, and I try to do it regularly. For me, running, which is really what I've gravitated towards. I've done a bunch of different other endurance stuff, but it's part of who I am and what makes me tick every day. I mean, it's just, and my kids know as well, like when I haven't ran, they're like, Dad, you need to go run. So, you know, what I found is just, it makes me a better human being. The thing that I love about running is just the simplicity of it. You don't need a bunch of equipment or any particular location. I could be anywhere in the world, just take off trotting. And as long as there's gas stations or places to refuel, I can just keep going. So for me, it's not even like training. It's just, you know, I found me and what gives me peace, and I consistently do that.
And I'm sure you can both agree about this, the freedom for all those different disciplines is just miraculous.
Yeah, I got to
What
agree
about
with you on the simplicity.
the training, gentlemen, the training in terms of the good workouts, the bad workouts, the not so good workouts? How do you get through those difficult periods, Adam?
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Mark. I'd say it's always the bad workouts, or the workouts that start bad, are always the one at the end of the day that you're glad you did. I feel that it's like there's something that you have to push your way through, and that really that ends up being the payoff in the end.
Jason?
I think Adam's got a great point. I really liked how you started that off, Adam. Like the ones that start off the worst usually end up the best.
Right.
And I think it's just always mindset. And sometimes the ones that start off the worst and end the worst, you go to sleep, you wake up the next day, and you're like, "Wow, I got through it. I made it."
Or the
And
next one
sometimes-
feels great, right? Maybe there's a payoff.
Well, that's that component I think that really good athletes have, the willingness not to say, you know what, I don't have it today. I'm going to throw in the towel and tomorrow I'll start over. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But you know what? You're in it for the long haul, and you got to give it everything you got.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's a great point, Mark. For me, when I'm actually in a training mode, and not just fun run, when I'm actually in a training mode, it's all about consistency. And for me, consistency pays off. With consistency of effort, you get consistent results. Inconsistent effort, you get inconsistent results. And when you have your training plan set and based in consistency, you got to get out there every day. You got to take that first step, no matter how crappy it is, the first step or the second step. And sometimes they're great steps, but there are those rough times. And what you find, what I have found anyway, when you put in that consistent effort, it's so easy. And I've done this earlier on in my training career. It's easy to pull the plug and just quit and pull out. But when you have a plan and you stick to your plan, what you'll find is over time, it pays off. And being a long distance endurance athlete, it's like I have such base on my body and so many miles. I took off running for probably like 4 months, and I came back within a month time period. In that first startup month, I did a 100-mile run, 100K run, and a marathon with no injury. I mean, I was a lot slower than what I usually run, but still, because my body has that much base, it knows how to do it. Plus, I have experience for how to do those things now, and I know that. But I really think it's about consistency, and consistency is really important, I think, for any athlete who's coming up in the ranks and really, really wants to improve.
It's like the mantra, 10,000 hours to be good at anything. I mean, you need that time in the saddle, time in the running shoes, a time in the pool, just consistency, as you say, Jason. And, I don't think I've ever shared this with anybody because it's kind of hokey, but I remember training for my first marathon. Hey, and face it, some days you go out there, you got to do your workout and you're into it. Maybe even physically you feel it, but emotionally you're like, and mentally you're like, So sometimes I remember training for my long runs, the 18-mile or the 20-mile runs, and I'd say like a mantra, like, I'm a machine, whatever it took me to get through it. Does anything like that resonate with you? Adam?
I always do stuff like that. I do a lot of that, especially on the side training, the weight work and things like that. I mean, sometimes just being in the gym by yourself, 5 a.m, you just, I feel like I'm not feeling it. And I'll say all kinds of goofy things like, like I'm pulling myself up El Capitan or something while I'm doing pull-ups, whatever. But yeah, anything to spark your brain, because that's half the battle right there.
And Jason, I imagine more than the 3,000 miles plus that you've clocked going coast to coast, I'm sure you've had some mantras running in between your cerebellum there.
Yeah. So, sometimes what I do is, if it's not that bad, I just repeat my kids' names: Sierra Sage Sophia, Sierra Sage Sophia, and it,
Love it.
becomes numbing. But if it gets really, really bad, then I resort to my faith. And actually, I have a scriptural verse that talks about, when you believe, you mount up on wings and soar. You mount up and soar on wings and soar like eagles. You run and don't grow weary. You walk and don't faint. So it's basically, fly, walk, run, fly, walk, run, fly, walk, run. But it's about believing and having hope. And that's when the bottom falls out, that's it.
That sounds reminiscent of a motivational speaker, Jason Romero. Guys, are you your biggest competitors? Your biggest enemy? Adam?
I might have some real enemies. I'm not going to name them right now, Mark. They know who they are. But yeah, of course. I mean, especially in, what were some pretty challenging times living in New York City, these last 10 weeks or something. Diet and consistency all kind of fell by the wayside different times, sickness and things like that. And yeah, of course, at the end of the day, you wake up and it's just you who's responsible for getting back on track.
But in terms of when you're in a triathlon, Adam, are you focused on, of course, we use other people usually to kind of like pull us along to get through that swim faster, to get through the transition area, et cetera, et cetera. But are you more focused on the inner competition with yourself or equally with other people?
I'd say it's especially like you talk about transitions, Mark, when you're blind. I tend to do a lot of like breathing and counting. Jason's making me feel bad because I never use my kids' names. I never even thought of that. I'll have to start doing that. But yeah, I just start counting and trying to stay in my own head. And I'm not necessarily competing there. I guess when you're finishing up a run and you can hear someone's footsteps in front of you, that always gives you a little goose, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Central Park, I mean, is a great training ground for myself, and I always used it for other people to lure me in. Not so much that I wanted to catch them, more that I just want to finish my damn workout. How about you, Jason?
At this stage, I'm 50 years old. I'm always in a race of one. I'm the winner and the loser. And I always try to help people along the way. There was a time when I was racing against other people, but for me, it just feels like the older I've gotten, it's kind of like a metaphor for life. There's no blaming anybody else for my current situation. I got myself to blame, and I also have myself to celebrate. And that's kind of the simplicity that I've tried to bring it down to. And I race against myself and try to help us all together, get to the
Well
finish
said.
line, achieve our goals.
You guys are obviously seasoned athletes. We're all, I think, relatively close in age. You said 50. I'm sorry, I'm 35. Wink,
I'm
wink.
48. So
Jason, wink, wink. No, I got a few years on you, Jason.
So I'm the senior.
Exactly. It's about disposition. It's about perspective, but the mental game for triathlons and endurance sports is so gargantuan that it's not a young person's game. And when I was starting to do marathons when I was younger, 25, I heard that, and it certainly grew more and more true for me as the decades go by. What do you think about that, Adam?
Oh, definitely, because the way to keep going, especially as you get a little bit older, it gets easier and easier to injure yourself, and the way you don't do that is by being contained, by knowing who you are. In Central Park, there's a few times when someone's running in front of me and I've tried to blast those last 100 yards and it hurt a lot, and it's like I don't know where they started, who they are, why did I do that? And so you get a little bit more seasoned. It's like I don't know who you run with, Mark, but like there are times when I'll be running with like all of a sudden they'll pair me with like a 16-year-old kid, and I have to say like, hey, I'm not 16, and although that it should be easier than it is, it's sometimes hard for me to know that. And I have to say like, look, okay, we're going up Cat Hill at this pace. We're doing this, we're doing that. I'm not gonna, I could push it, but it's gonna hurt my workout tomorrow. And I gotta be, I gotta save something for the tank.
And I think the real silver lining, a lot of people may be laughing. Silver lining, what's the silver lining to a triathlon is that with the multiple disciplines, there's always a change up. There's always a mix here. Whether it's a Ironman or a sprint, it's something's around the corner. It's going to change up. For endurance sports,
I'm always so happy to get out of that water. The bike feels like you're resting.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for an endurance sport, you're pretty much committed to that one discipline for running for days upon days or weeks or months. Obviously, this is something that you've taken on, bitten off not more than you could chew, but you've grown into this. So the mental aspect, the mental game of this must be gargantuan, Jason.
Yeah, and my thing that I realize, like when I'm in a long distance race, I'm 50 years old, but as the race gets longer, I grow stronger. And a lot of people go the opposite direction. Like they feel like they have a certain amount and they wear out. I actually feel like I'm becoming energized and charging up. The issue for me becomes sleep deprivation, and just from being a human, there's a certain point I can go probably like 36 hours running without sleep, and then weird stuff starts to happen. And but it's kind of interesting you were saying that. There's this race that's called a race for the ages. And as you enter it, it's truly, I don't know what you call handicaps people based on age. So however old you are, that's how many hours you get to run, and you try to clock as many miles as you can. This past year, the oldest entrant won, and he was 73 years old, and he clocked like 260 plus miles in 73 hours.
That's incentive for you.
Yeah, he was racing. A 50-year-old gets to run for 50 hours. A 24-year-old gets to run for 24 hours. And it was, it's a real interesting concept. But that's the other thing I think that's real interesting is as you get older, I think you get smarter, wiser. You're not going to be hitting that 100-meter dash like you used to, but for longer distances, or if you're getting a triathlon, or because triathlon is like a thinking person's sport. Running, not so much. You could be like brain dead and still keep running. But triathlon, you got to actually think. You go through these transitions. You have to have everything laid out, organized. Very type A people. And I admire you, Adam. I don't know how you do it, buddy.
Oh,
but
believe me, Jason, I'm sitting here nodding. When you said 36 hours, sprint triathlon.
Even
Maybe
just the mere fact that you couldn't sleep for 36 hours, let alone exercising for 36 hours, is daunting.
You get good endorphins. It's the free drugstore right in my brain.
Absolutely. Good line. Good line. If you just joined us, welcome to Foreseeable Future Foundation's Overcoming Obstacles in Sports conversation. I'm Mark Farrell. I am with Adam Lynn. Give a wave, Adam.
Hey.
Jason Romero is on the bottom of your screen or to the right of your screen, and we are still waiting for Ren Zimmerman. She is a equestrian show jumper, and she's obviously having problems getting her horse back into the barn, but we're hoping that she gets there real quick. Gentlemen, what have you learned about yourself in the last 3 horrifically long months with COVID-19 as an athlete and as a person? Adam.
Well, honestly, Mark, it put things in a lot of perspective. I know we're talking about sports here, but yeah, when this pandemic started, my wife's an infectious disease doctor, so I think we had information a little bit sooner than a lot of people, and so we were a lot more terrified. And so we actually all ended up getting COVID-19 right toward the beginning of the pandemic. So luckily, my case was very, very mild. My wife's was a little more severe, but that knocked me on my rear end for a few weeks. And you have this momentary moment where you feel bad about not hitting the weights or whatever, and then you're just like, you know what, I got to put this all in perspective. And so it's felt amazing to kind of get out of that mode and to start to feel a little bit better. Get out there. I ran today with my dog. And my wife in 2 different sessions. And I was like, man, talk about appreciation. This is like water in the desert. I mean, this is just amazing. So,
did your athleticism and or workout suffer because of the 9 weeks, 12 weeks?
Sure. But I'm not even going to give it suffer because going back to like Jason, as you get older, yeah, my wife, we're both saying like, hey, we got a little soft. We put on some weight. It's like, you know what? We're alive. We're taking care of ourselves and our kids. We're taking care of the community. Like, hey, what are you going to do? It's about, okay, let me just build it back better than ever.
Yeah, I think overall it's going to make everybody more resilient, more thankful, gratitude, et cetera. But certainly it's going to make you a stronger athlete. And Jason, I'm sure you can relate to that as well.
Yeah. What this time taught me is one major lesson. That is, hey, we got Ren on.
Hello, Ren.
Hi.
Hey, Ren.
Sorry to interrupt. I am so sorry about that. I had some major technical difficulties.
No, we were telling everybody you couldn't get your horse back into the barn, so go with that story.
Perfect. We'll go with that.
We'll be right with you, Ren.
Okay, sounds good.
But the thing that I learned that I took away from this time is that, the lesson for us all is that the world can act together in concert like that on a moment's notice for common instance, and we all did. And we learned that with COVID. My thought is, can we as a world apply that lesson to some of these larger issues like poverty, global warming, pick your social issue, but what I think that we have learned is that the entire world can act together in concert in an instant. We just have to have the right motivation. And I hope that can be parlayed in other areas, you know, and make sure that we get safe, we get through this. But I think that's a big learning for us as a whole. And the other one that's just always out there is we just always need to help each other. And there were just really great stories and great examples that I got a chance to experience. I got a chance to get help and to give help. So it was great.
Ren Zimmerman, equestrian
Hi.
show jumper, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we were bragging about you before. It's amazing what you do. It's amazing to have 3 elite athletes, triathlete, endurance runner. It actually sounds like a joke. What happens when you have a triathlete, endurance runner, and a equestrian show jumper that are all blind together in one conversation? I guess the sky's the limit. That's the answer.
True.
So what have you learned about yourself, Ren, besides learning how to reboot your computer 10 times in 10 minutes during COVID-19?
I think it's taken a lot of patience to deal with it. I've had to use a lot of alternative methods of, in the athletic world, staying healthy, keeping active. And I think, as he was saying before, helping others and kind of staying mentally sane through it all. But I think, hopefully we'll all come out of this a little bit stronger.
And I want to ask you this question, Ren, because you have a completely different discipline that requires the trust and faith and companionship of a horse. Mm-hmm. So what motivates you to be the elite athlete that you are? I know you're an amateur, a top amateur, but still, your competition is very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, so, when I first wanted to start riding horses, I actually started at a therapeutic riding center, and all the work that I did on the horse was on the flat, and I always wanted to jump. And so the instructor there actually told me that wasn't possible because of my vision. And so, my motivation is kind of twofold. It's my own personal drive to always want to be better and to do more. And then there's kind of that, people telling you can't do something, you want to prove them wrong and show that you can do it, not only, for myself, but for other, both visually impaired and blind athletes, as well as anyone with a disability, to show that people with disabilities can do something like that. So that's kind of where my motivation comes from.
I always say that persons with disabilities are some of the most creative and able to problem solve on the fly more so than most people. And Adam, what do you think about that? I mean, you're doing something pretty spectacular, doing triathlons, being a blind athlete. So you're a testament to this.
I mean, I meet through Achilles and through my sport, I've met so many disabled athletes and people who I'm constantly blown away. I mean, people, I don't know. I mean, I just am like jaw dropping. It how some people with, multiple disabilities, severe disabilities, can push through. So I feel like, man, it's easy for me sometimes compared to some of these folks. But yeah, no, I think for all disabled people, you wake up in the morning and you're in a world designed for people who are a little bit different than you, and you're problem solving from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. And
Adam, I want to tell our audience that Achilles, that you mentioned a few times, is an incredible organization, originally based in New York, founded by Dick Traum. It's an incredible organization for persons who want to run with one disability, multiple disabilities, and they just do incredible work. So good for you for being part of them and for getting me a t-shirt.
Oh, I will definitely get your t-shirt, and believe me, I'm lucky every day to have them, and I cannot wait till we can run again.
Jason, how about yourself? The fact that you have a disability doesn't define you. It probably propels you even further and farther.
Yeah, I think, my visual challenge is RP, retinitis pigmentosus. So it's a degenerative visual condition. And I think it's really defined me. And it's been this thing, when I was a young kid, I used to call it a curse. It's actually a blessing because it taught me how to adapt. Like, I'm one of the most adaptable people you'll ever meet. And that's one of the other things, because I'm constantly adapting. Like I get it to a certain level of eyesight, I've adapted, I figured it out, then my eyes change, I got to adapt again. So it's this constant level of adaptation. But what I've noticed with challenged athletes, which is amazing, is, we can do anything and everything. We just do it different. And what's really cool is when you get in with a group of people, like, for running, there's a whole bunch of different things you could do. Different types of tethers or trekking poles or lighting or just, route memorization or ticks or putting reflectors on the trees. Like there's just so many different things. And what I found is like when I get with other people who are in the same discipline sport, you start chatting it up. I'm amazed at like all the ideas and cool stuff and just the creativity involved. It's like super cool. I dig it.
Absolutely. It's amazing when you get, like-minded people together, different disciplines. I mean, between the four of us, we could probably be like, what? Oh, that's an amazing concept of running or biking, how you do this. And Ren, for me to wrap my head around you being an equestrian show jumper, for me, it's almost two disciplines because you're actually doing one incredibly athletic endeavor on the horse. But Jason mentioned the word adaptation. And for you and for an onlooker, adaptation is a huge part of your world. When you go to a show, when you're going in the warm-up part of the rehearsal, pardon me for lack of a better word, that you're counting steps, you're trying to find the distance and size of the field. So adaptation is a huge part of your world.
Absolutely, yeah. So, what Jason said about his vision is progressive degenerative, as is mine, which is Stargardt's disease. So, not only are we constantly adapting as our vision deteriorates, but the things that we have to do for our sport. And, for example, in the warm-up arena and when I'm on course, I actually use a Bluetooth earpiece. So my trainer can be in my ear, beforehand, I've already memorized everything, all the striding, where I need to turn, at what angle, what degree. But in case things, don't go according to plan, I also have that earpiece so that my trainer is in my ear telling me if I'm not quite straight to a jump, or if I need to put in an extra stride. But what's really interesting is having spoken with other people with disabilities who ride horses, the same thing happens when we get together. We'll start throwing out ideas. And I mean, you come up with things like having a lead horse or putting bright colored big pieces of paper on the jump standards, or having sounds, where it's on the left side of the jump. So there's so many ideas that people come up with that you wouldn't normally have to because there's no need for it.
I tell a story about when I did my first triathlon and I was freaking out because I got to the water's edge. It's a 20-minute story, but the crux of it is I realized I couldn't see the buoys. And again, all of us can probably relate to this because we don't consider ourselves disabled. And I never thought about, oh man, I'm going to have to see the race course. And then I had an epiphany. I'll just follow everybody. So it came down to a simple thing. I wasn't planning on winning the race. What about adapting? Because a lot of us work out in the gym a part of the time, a portion of the time before COVID-19 that descended upon us. It forced us to think differently, live differently, and work out differently. My son, part of his homework for PT, for gym class, was to do planks. So he started doing 4 and 5 minute planks. I'm like, you know what? I'm not 10 years old, but I'm going to get up there. So little things like that prompted me. How about you, Adam, with your kids and or just being creative around the house?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, when the thing first broke and we were kind of we were in a pretty small Manhattan apartment, I just started lifting my daughters up again and again and again and stuff like that. So it was a way to kind of keep focused, keep connected, and to try and do a little workout. But recently we left New York. We're at my mom's place up in Massachusetts, and it's pretty rural. And I just started running with my dog, which I actually started doing in Manhattan because it was so quiet. Like 5 in the morning, I couldn't take it anymore being in the apartment. And unfortunately, it's too small to have any kind of cardio equipment. And we went out with the dog, and I just started jogging a little bit, then running, and then, the streets were empty. It was pretty bizarre. But yeah, today I took the dog out for a run, and it's like, the dog got tired before me, and I was kind of like, man, she's not that old a dog. It's kind of sad, but I guess the dog needs to build herself back up too.
Well done, Adam. So Jason, I imagine the world is your gym.
Yeah, I just kept running. It was business as usual for me.
Yeah.
And it was actually nice because I live in Denver. I do run like a lot of paths, but there's also a lot of streets I run. I get hit by cars quite a bit. And there were none of those metal boxes of death out there to get me. So it's been nice, but they're coming back. So but it's not like Manhattan. Adam, I don't know how you guys do it.
Well, there was a little bit of Frogger at the beginning of the outbreak because the cars were going pretty fast and there wasn't a lot of cross traffic. But yeah, I also had some pretty good walks where I had the city to myself, which probably won't ever happen again. That was pretty bizarre.
We lightly touched on this, Ren, before you joined our conversation, but more specifically, does having a disability, being visually impaired, being blind, make you more competitive? Ren, let's start with you.
You know, I think I have a competitive nature, regardless of my disability, but I think there's definitely that need or that drive to want to do better than people. You know, I always want to win. That's always my ultimate goal. And so to not only do better because to prove that someone with a disability can do it, but I definitely think it plays into it a little, although I do think you have to have a competitive nature to begin with to do a sport like this.
Adam?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, there's two ways to answer that. What we were touching on earlier, Mark and Jason, saying like you get a little bit older, you know, you're your own competitor, and that's true. I also am heavily involved with the New York Rockers, which are a blind baseball team, Italian baseball. We played over in Rome last year in a competition. And Mark, I would have run over my mother to get to second base to not be thrown out. So to say I'm not competitive would be BS. So,
I love it. Bravissimo.
I mean, yeah, exactly. You know, so yeah. I mean, of course, there's competition. I mean, there's cooperation and competition, and they kind of work hand in hand.
How about you, Jason? Does it make you more competitive having a disability?
You know, not really against the other fields. It's really against my guides. And I have this one guide. He actually lives in New York, and he is an amazing athlete. And I keep thinking I could drop him. And one time I was running a marathon, and we were hauling. It was going to be like a sub 3-hour marathon, and he stopped at a portalet to go to the bathroom.
What?
And I was like, this is my chance. So I took off, like I put down the hammer, and then the dude still ran me down. So my competition is always to mess with my guides, because, you know, a person who guides me anyway, I'm not sure about Adam, but they need to have a higher fitness level than me, because guiding just takes more work. So that, you know, when I get a run and get guided, I get guided by like some amazing athletes. And I'm running like with like superstar, you know? So I always try to drop them, but doesn't work so well. So.
Now, Jason, how do you find your guys? Is it through trial and error? Is it personality? How do you find a perfect match? Is it kind of like dating?
It's yeah, well, I'm single right now, so yeah, probably like that. It's you know, for me it's really tough, because to find somebody who does the miles that I do and the speed that I do, it's tough. But I do run mountain courses, so then I end up, you know, getting, you know, some really different people. I mean, you know, there's some really go-to elite athletes, because for some reason, you know, somebody shows up at like these long distance things with a blind bib, and then you know, come in okay, and people kind of like start asking questions, and then they're like, yeah, if I could ever help. And I take down those numbers, let me tell you, because it's really hard a lot of times for people, you know, they give up their race so that they can help me. Like, and that's you know, that's an amazing thing. It's just you know, it's a tough thing. I'm always keeping my network strong, you know, for guides, and you know, for every guide that's ever helped another person, I just thank them always, not just for myself, but on behalf of any disabled athlete, because it's amazing.
Adam Lynn, was that your foray into Achilles, needing a guide?
Well, sure. Well, I'm totally blind. So yeah, so if I were going to run, I think I was working out at a gym with a bunch of blind guys just doing weight stuff. And then someone said, "Oh, you ought to come out to the park and do some running." And just the number of tremendous people that I've met and had the chance to run with, I mean, just amazing, just amazing. And a lot of times we'll chat while we're running and stuff around the park, and it's like I learned so much from them, and I'm incredibly appreciative of the help that they give.
We're going to get to our viewers' questions momentarily. By the way, if you'd like to submit a question, please do so via chat. I remember, I'm going to date myself now. Adam, maybe you'll appreciate this. Being on the bus, being on the bus or the subway in New York City and looking at Triathlete magazine, I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. What a world. I want to be a part of it. Reading about Dave Scott and Scott Tinley and all these guys, and just thinking everything they said was, you know, law, because it kind of was. There's no other reference or resource back then. And that's obviously decades ago. What works for you guys, whether it's a conversation or a resource online, friends, Achilles, you name it? Ren, we'll start with you.
are you talking about kind of like what works to support us as we pursue the
Support, nutrition, mental support, you name it, across the board to be the athlete that you are.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, as corny as this sounds, my horse. He's my main partner in this. A lot of people think that equestrian disciplines are actually individual sports, but they're a team sport because it involves the rider, the horse, and the trainer. So without him, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. Now, on a more, personal, people supporting me, my family, obviously, I have a great boyfriend who drives me to every single show, every single day that I have to go out and ride. But for me, it's that drive to do better and to keep going that kind of is what keeps me mentally sane, if you will. I mean, without horses and without riding, I don't really think I would have a path, or I would have a path, but I wouldn't be as happy doing it. So it's that quality of life that doing this sport gives me that is sort of that mental sanity, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Adam?
Could you rephrase the question, Mark, to make sure I'm on point?
I'll tell you what, we're going to get to some questions as well. So I'm going to cut you off there, right there, Adam. Someone wants to know, I can't see their name, what form of tandem works best for you? Adam?
You mean the actual model of the bike?
I'm sure the model, size, etc.
Well, I'm going to show my ignorance there because I think oftentimes, we're really fortunate to have the bikes we have. So I always, sometimes you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. So I mean, I've seen some of my guides have fixed some inner tubes pretty quickly. So I don't have like a technical reference. That's something you'd probably have to go to
from Rebecca
to someone else.
Wonderful presentation. Super.
We have a question from Brandy who wants to know, do you, and I imagine for all athletes, have a single or multiple guides?
Oh, within a sport or within a specific race or in general?
I think in general.
Because in general, of course, yes. I have a couple guides. I have my friend Hakan Stanis, who's a fantastic runner who's like given me so much of his time and energy, and it's great to have someone specific, especially like as you're training up for something. But of course, I mean, you're doing so much stuff. It's great to have a community of people.
Jason, how about yourself?
Yeah, I second that. I got like my little black book of guides, and I think that's very important to have. Always have backups, and each guide brings something different to make you, a better athlete. I think that's something tremendous. So for whoever asked that question, I would highly encourage always using more than one guide and working with different guides. That's a really good question.
You agree about that, Ren?
I think for me, my sport's a little bit different. I do have one instructor, and so she's always the one that's on my earpiece working with me. And I think it takes a special kind of person and a lot of practice to know exactly how to count down strides to a jump or how to exactly navigate me, because we're going pretty fast as we're jumping around this course. So at one time, I normally just have my instructor, so one guide.
Hey, Ren, let me ask you if you can kind of give a quicker answer to this.
Yeah.
I think there are two components from an outsider thinking about your sport. I mean, you are one with your horse, but then you're also thinking about and counting, as we talked about, adapting and counting steps and knowing where you are pre-jump, mid-jump, and post-jump. Obviously, that takes a great deal of time and experience to become proficient at, but is it all just so in concert for you? I think we lost Ren's audio. And I certainly am not a lip reader. So we'll wait for Ren to rejoin us. Kim has a question for Ren, so we're going to come back. Carlos has a question for Jason.
I think I'm back.
Back, Ren?
I am back.
Okay, so the question was basically there's a lot going on for you. How much time does it take for you to get really proficient at not only riding the horse, but being able to do the timing and the pacing and the counting?
Right. So I've been riding for about 6 years. And, I'm competing against able-bodied riders who have actually been riding for their entire lives. So it does take, it's not, it's a slow sport to learn in. So people have been riding for years before they're at the point where I'm at. But, you know, it takes a lot of practice and memorization to even memorize the course before I go into the arena. So that's about a 2-hour process. And there's more information on my website about that process. But the actual, as you said, like the concert of riding, there's so much going on. You have those strides that you've memorized, you're counting, and the horse obviously is its own being. So as it changes, you know, he's not consistent. And so you have to be aware of what he's doing and changing your ride to accommodate him if he's going faster, if he slows down. So it's kind of this, like everything is going on and it sort of just happens seamlessly and you change as you go along, if that explains that a little bit.
It does. It's unfathomable. Hats off to you, Ren.
Thank you.
Question for Jason from Carlos. What was the hardest part of your run, and did you suffer any injury that you had to overcome or that cost you time when you're running coast to coast?
Hardest part was being away from my kids. I had to separate from my kids for over 2 months.
Wow.
The injuries, yeah, I had every running injury you could ever imagine pretty much all at the same time, just not broken bones. That went from plantar fasciitis to shin splints to hamstrings to glutes to you just name it, everything. But what I realized is I did use like rock tape, and basically if it's a soft tissue injury, I taped it and I just kept going. And what I realized was the body heals itself. So, you know, I'd have like a Achilles tendonitis, I'd tape it up, and after like about 5 days, it would heal on the left side, then it would present on the right side, and then it, you know, just kind of moved all over the body. But any long-lasting injury, no, I didn't have that. But it did, you know, I don't know if it was age or the run, but it took a toll on my overall speed. I can still go long distance, but the overall speed, you know, it does something to you, you know, going that long, that far.
Hey, Ren, I hope you're really listening up, and you're going to have to watch this full broadcast in
Yeah,
its
I will.
entirety, because seasoned sage advice is being dispensed here, because you're very young and very new and very successful in your sport. But we're talking about some older things before, about the mental aspects. And it just boggles my mind, everyone, the fact that the human body can adapt to so many things, like Jason just said, on the fly with tape and the soft tissue, et cetera. But even mentally, how we all surprise ourselves on how we think, wow, I'm not sure if I could do that extra 20 miles or that extra, you know, Ironman, or putting 2 extra races in a season, or going for that other ribbon for the equestrian show jumper competition. And we all find ourselves kind of looking scared and kind of nuanced sometimes, but then we realize, you know what, I can do that. Anyone want to respond to that?
You know, I'll jump in there. For me, one of the biggest things is you're always trying to jump higher. So, you know, the height that I'm doing now, I have aspirations to compete at the top level. And while I can't actually see the height of the jump as I'm going to it, you know, I know that it's been put higher, or I'm told that it's been put higher. So that's something that there's almost like this mental game going on in your head where you know something, but you can't see it. So that's something where, you know, I've proven to myself time and time again that I can do it, because I've jumped those higher things. But it's definitely, you know, you have to kind of talk yourself through it and tell yourself you can do it, and that other people are doing it, and that you're no different than other people, and you get through it.
And quickly, guys, going back to COVID-19, because obviously it played a huge part on all of our lives. In terms of diet-wise, obviously I remember telling my kids, hey, whatever you're used to, it's an all new world we have. Whatever dad brings home from the grocery store, that's what we're going to consume. But as an athlete, that has different consequences. Anyone like to address that?
Yeah, as a blind runner and triathlete who needed a guide, I mean, there's no way around it. It was terrible. I mean, like, you know, we need to be able to work out a way that we can, you know, get back with our guides, because you know, there's no virtual guiding, basically. So yeah.
Did you feel, though, did you take a hit nutritionally, though? Because obviously the stores in New York and or Massachusetts didn't stock what you're usually accustomed to, and having that protein or whatever you need to fuel your body.
I realized what a privilege, like the diet I'd been doing, which was a pretty high protein diet. You know, it's, my wife pretty quickly on in the whole thing. She was obviously very busy doing the medical stuff, like asked me to bake some bread and everything. And the low carb thing went out the window. And because sometimes your marriage takes priority even over your conditioning, especially during a pandemic.
Good man.
So the amount of pasta that's been consumed is rather epic. And again, I've forgiven myself.
Good.
So I give dispensation to all athletes.
How about yourself, Jason?
For me, food is fuel, and I eat everything and anything, so it really didn't matter. I just put it in my body and it goes. That's all.
Question from, can't make out the name, so excuse me. Can you recommend any good inspirational books for being blind in high school? I'm an athlete. Also, are there any books or websites for coaches of blind student athletes? Andy, that's from Andy. Feel free, anyone.
I'll jump in there. I'll promote. There's this one book called Running into the Dark. It's by a guy named Jason Romero. He ran across America. He's blind. But actually, I did 3 parts of that story. In part 1, I went way back to childhood, but it talks about having this, at that point, it was really a hidden disability, and I did not tell anybody about it. And I had a tremendous amount of shame about being visually impaired, and I just wouldn't tell other people. I was always at a disadvantage. It was hard to get through school, hard to do athletics, hard to date, all this different stuff. But I kind of laid it out there, and it was good. The reason why I say that, I think it would be good for a person growing up. I would have appreciated knowing an adult who'd gone through the process of losing their eyesight. And the other thing that I would say too, that I've done now within the last probably 4 years, is I got a mentor for going blind. So I found a person who's older than me and further along in the going blind process. And basically we have weekly conversations. We become really great friends. But as I have something happen in my visual deterioration, then I talk to my mentor and she explains, oh, this is what's going on and this is what you can kind of expect. And nobody's journey is exactly the same. But I think like we have mentors for everything, for athletics, for jobs, for whatever. Have a mentor for going blind.
It's pivotal. I think that's great. And I hope that everyone takes that advice. And I can't speak for you guys, but I know being a cyclist, I never got off my bicycle, once I learned how to ride until my current age. And actually one of the things I love about COVID, it's actually starting to transition back, but the quiet roads are just dreamy. But the point I want to make is that I had no mentor in school when you couldn't see the boards, in college, going for job interviews, all the things I couldn't do, and in sport as well. So if we can act as a mentor to a person with or without a disability, it's a win-win. Adam or Ren?
Go
Go
ahead.
Let's see.
Adam?
I was just gonna, I mean, as a disabled athlete, I've had so many people give to me that it is really important for me to try and give back when I can. So there's some younger guys on the team and it's like, they're great athletes, but if I give them some advice on, again, sometimes you got to cook bread when your wife tells you to. That's what I love doing is helping, younger guys along.
I think we're going to have bread with our happy hour after this goes.
I haven't made
Ren,
it.
how about yourself?
I'm probably going to be on the hook after this call.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Literally and figuratively.
Exactly.
I definitely agree with the mentorship. I'm 31 years old, so I'm by no means, I don't have a whole lot of life experience, but even I, have taken a few people under my wing. And I think being able to help those younger people, there's a Facebook group for blind and visually impaired equestrians, and there's about 50 people in it, and it started maybe 2 weeks ago. So I think being able to connect with other people that have similar interests as you, but who are also going through the process of losing their vision, who are farther along, I think that can really help you as you go through the process yourself, and know that you're not alone and that there are other people out there that have been where you've been and they're still doing something successfully and doing what makes them happy, and that you too will be able to do that as your vision progresses.
Absolutely. What a feeling. And Ren Zimmerman, the final question comes to you. What is the process of choosing a horse that is right for you? I mean, Jason and Adam, if you want to chime in, I'm sure you can have something to add, but Ren is probably the most specific specialty person for this.
So first and foremost is your financial budget. That plays the largest part.
Back to the bread.
the more money you have, the better horse you can get. Unfortunately, I was on a budget. So the other things that I took into consideration are, number one was a horse that had already competed at a high level, that knew his job, that would go over any jump. You know, a horse that stops is incredibly dangerous for anyone, especially someone who can't see, because you don't really know when the jump is coming. You don't know what the horse is going to do. So something that gets you to that other side. Something that knows his job and will go over the jump even if you're crooked to it or you don't have the right distance. And then temperament. You know, a horse that spooks obviously is more dangerous for someone who doesn't have vision, because you can't see the objects in the arena if the horse does decide to take off bucking or rearing and kind of navigate that. So those, I think, are the main things that I considered when I was looking for a horse. Of course, you know, there's a plethora of other things that you could go on and on about, but those are definitely the main options.
It's not about color.
No, it's not about color.
I thought it's all about the name.
The name plays into it, yeah.
Cupcake. I mean, how could you not love a horse named Cupcake?
That would be adorable.
So I'd like to have some final thoughts from you guys. If you can make it on the short side, that'd be great. What's in the foreseeable future for you, and starting with Adam?
Well, I hope that, you know, probably as like we transition through the summer, I know a couple of us have kids, you know, get the kids back in school, get out back on the roads, and get back in the races. You know, that's really it.
Jason?
More of the same. Try to continue making the world a better place. And if I can do anything to help any of the viewers or anything like that, please reach out to me. jasonromero.net. It's got an email link. I like to make myself accessible, available, and I just want to help.
Ren Zimmerman.
You know, on a personal level, obviously get back to horse showing and continue to try to jump higher. But one of my main missions is actually to advocate for the sport of show jumping to become a paradiscipline and eventually a Paralympic sport. So I'm currently talking with the regulating bodies both in Canada and the US to recognize the sport of para show jumping, to hopefully create more resources, opportunities, and pathways for people with all sorts of disabilities to participate in the sport. And again, you know, for anyone out there that is interested in equestrian, feel free to reach out to me. I think my website's on there. It's Ren Blay, and I'd be more than happy to help.
And Ren, great work. I think you sold yourself short a few moments ago when you said you're 31. You haven't done that much. You're blazing trails, and that's awesome.
Thank you.
Each one of
Thank
you. Adam Lynn, Ren Zimmerman, Jason Romero, thank you so much for your time. This entire interview conversation will be available on foreseeablefuture.org. We urge you to go on, read the bios, complete bios of each one of these incredible people. I believe their website and links are on there. While you're there, of course, I'm going to keep selling you. Sign up to be on Foreseeable Future Foundation's email list, get some blasts about events such as this. Galas upcoming. Unfortunately, we had to postponed due to COVID-19, but any other information. Special thanks to our sponsor, Swerve Fitness in New York City. They do an outstanding job. Thank you very much for believing in Foreseeable Foundation. Thank you to the team that put all this together, Griffin Pinkow, Juan, who's doing all the technical work, James, Deanna, and I believe that's it. And guys, thank you so much for sharing your stories, doing what you do. And lastly, I articulated something that I've been doing all my life and you've been doing all your life. And I came up with a few simple words, 5 words that I strung together besides I'm a machine, Jason. One of my mantra of running when I'm tired or biking, that it's something that we all can relate to. My difference makes me stronger. And I believe everyone in this world has a disability in the way we live, the way we think, the way we, everything, underscore everything. And I think that encapsulates each and all of us, whether we have a disability or not. And I thank you again for doing what you do, and hope it continues to bring you happiness. Be well and be kind, and hope you stay close and keep Foreseeable Future Foundation part of your life.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you guys having us on.
Thank you.
Viewers, we greatly appreciate your time, and stay close to us and stay safe. Be well, be kind, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.